Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 9 of the 44th Mill Valley Film Festival. Thank you for being here. This is an incredible, exciting night because it is a tribute to Sir Kenneth Branagh. Not only will we be honoring Sir Kenneth, but we will be showing his latest film, which just won the People's Choice Award at Toronto and at a fantastic screening in Telluride. And it's called Belfast, and you're going to love it. Of course, we are a nonprofit, a 501c3, and we count on the kindness of individuals and corporations and foundations. And tonight, this screening is made possible by Jennifer McCready, who is not only been extremely generous to us and always there with her support or anything that we need, emotional support, monetary support, but she's also the president of our board of directors. Right next to me, I have my colleague, my esteemed colleague, Zoë Elton, Director of Programming.
So, tribute night at Mill Valley Film Festival. Let me tell you how this is going to run. We are going to see a clip reel of some highlights of this amazing multi-hyphenate's career, actor, director, writer. After that, we will be presenting the MVFF Award, and then we get to see Belfast. And then following Belfast, we'll have a Q&A. We'll have a conversation following the film. So it's going to be a very rich evening. Fasten your seatbelts. And let's see the clip reel. Did you want to say anything else, Mark?
I do. I want to say a little bit about Sir Kenneth's work. He has been nominated 5 times for an Oscar in 5 different categories. Now, of course, Sir Kenneth is known for his incredible work documenting on film and the stage, Shakespeare. In fact, the first time we met was in 1996 when we had a screening of Hamlet, not in this theater. This wasn't built till 1999. And it's so great to have him back in the county again. But not only is his work comprised of Shakespeare, but myths are a very important part of his work. So you will see some great films, large films like Thor and other mega hits from around the globe. There really are very few people who are as accomplished and acclaimed as a writer, a director, an actor, and both on stage and film. So it truly is our honor to be having him here and this beautiful, beautiful film, Belfast. I think it's been said that you can take the boy out of Belfast, but you can't take the Belfast out of the boy.
You realize that Kenneth Branagh is from Belfast, right? We love our Irish people.
So without further ado...
Without further ado, let's see the clips.
Absolutely.
Great.
So here is Sir Kenneth's life passing before everybody's eyes in a few minutes.
Can I just say I got so engrossed in that, I almost forgot I had to come back up on stage. We have somebody special that we invited to do the award presentation today, but they are not actually able to be here physically. Now, you know a lot about Kenneth Branagh as an actor, a director, a writer, and an amazing artistic everyman. What you may not know is that he is the president of RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, in London. So in serving as president, one of the things that he did recently was to do the graduation ceremony for the class of 2021. And believe me, if you're graduating as an actor in 2021, that's something. You know, to go through that training virtually, that's not easy. So because this person cannot be here in person, we have a proxy. And Lucia Bonbright was one of the graduating students from RADA just a few weeks ago and received her degree from Kenneth Branagh. And so we're flipping the paradigm, and we've asked her to actually present the award for the person that she is now going to introduce to you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here tonight and to play a very small part in honouring this incredible artist. An inspiration to me and to my peers. And it is a huge privilege to introduce the Dame Judi Dench, who we will hear from now.
Ken, it seems rather a long time since we were both sent out of the studio during the televised recording of Ghosts. And a lot of things have happened since then. And blessedly, we've worked together so many times. I actually have lost count now. I think it's 10 or 11 times. And the most recent thing, of course, was Belfast last year during lockdown. It was the most wonderful experience, not just for me, but for all of us, because it suddenly gave us a great release and we felt we were doing something pretty normal. I don't know how you managed it, but you did, like you do everything. I'm so pleased you've won this award, the Mill Valley Award, and I congratulate you hugely. I'm only sorry that I'm not there to give you a hug. Many, many congratulations, and of course, love.
Please welcome to the stage Kenneth Branagh.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks so much, thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much, thank you. Thank you very, very, very much indeed. I learnt 35 years ago when I first worked with her that it's a pretty tough act to follow Judi Dench. But nevertheless, I will try. But the simplest thing to say is thank you very much to Mark and to Zoe and to Jennifer for your generosity, and to all of you. This is a beautiful thing to receive. I had a wonderful time when I came here all those years ago with the great Robin Williams in our film of Hamlet, and I love this part of the world very much. I feel as though I should really be giving an award to you, to all of you. The world is in a funny old place right now, and certainly the cinema business is. And so I can say with complete sincerity, I make films for you. You complete the journey. The audience is absolutely prime. We could make all the films in the world, and they could be, on a shelf somewhere if people like you don't show up to wonderful festivals like this. And I think that these days, festivals are more important than ever, and something as world-renowned as the Mill Valley Festival is, which it is vitally important as we try and encourage people back into the cinema after the difficult time that we've all had. So just by being here, thank you very much, and with this extraordinary generosity, thank you very much. You are doing what Shakespeare would refer to as a good deed in a naughty world. The other bit of Shakespeare I would like to quote. It's very simple about something like this when really there are no words to express how you feel. Is from another play of Shakespeare's where a character simply says, "I can no other answer make but thanks and thanks, and ever thanks. Thank you so much. And indeed, as my mother would insist, I say, thank you very much for having us. One other thing I will say, not to embarrass her, but Lucia was one of this year's graduates at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and they were heroic in the way they dealt with the difficulties. I'm sure you'll all have your own experiences of the challenges of lockdown, but they had their own particular version of it. They were very brave, they were very courageous, and I had the great privilege of being able to audition them all earlier in the year, and she's a terrific, terrific, terrific actress. You're going to hear a lot more about this actor, and so Lucia, well done, and please remember that name, Lucia Bombright. You'll be hearing it elsewhere. Thank you. Thank you. So I think you're very patient, you know, because you're waiting for a film. So we're going to get to that bit. So let me talk a tiny bit about it. I grew up in a place where it seemed to rain a lot, but where there was plenty of sunshine in the hearts of the people. We laughed a lot about silly things, so please feel free to laugh tonight if you are so moved. And we held each other when we cried about serious things, and generally, as a community, we were there for each other, for everyone. And then, as they say, things changed. So what you're about to see is the story of something that happened to me when I was 9 years old, which changed my life forever. It also affected very deeply many, many others in profound ways that reverberate to this day. I've been waiting and wanting to tell this story for 50 years, and over that time, repeatedly hearing the sound of this city and its people making so much cacophonous, beautiful noise in my head. And so at the beginning of lockdown, for reasons which will become clear when you see the film, I knew that finally attention must be paid. So after half a century, I listened and I wrote down what I heard. These events take place in a great northern city on the island of Ireland a long time ago in a place called Belfast. Thank you.
Take a deep breath. Please welcome back Kenneth Branagh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, what's it?
I know there's a variation on Maidens Unlace Me, which is people unmask me, right? Yeah. Sorry. You've come a long way from a little boy from Belfast.
You bet.
So, if I had been to ask your 9-year-old self, what were you going to be? What did you want to be when you grew up? What would you have said?
Wow, my goodness me. I mean, I watched that kid sitting there with the Thor comic, which was definitely happened, you know, and the idea that you'd end up on the other side of the world making such a film was incomprehensible. Before all this happened, the events of this story, you know, which isn't, you know, the absolute, not everything you see, as it were, is as per, but a vast amount of it is. And before that crowd came down that street, life was movies, Catherine, and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and being in this world where I didn't understand it in this way at that time, but where it takes a village to raise a child, and so I was in that village, and everybody was raising me and everybody else, and you knew who you were, you knew your relationship to the world, and you were in a way sort of entirely present. So the issue of what would you do wasn't really even in the air.
It's like just what you were doing was what you were, right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons to return to it was to return to the kind of the sort of presence, the being of yourself. When I'd learned really over the years that followed that that moment, that incident, those sort of 20 seconds really, when suddenly you're hearing this thing in the air, which had this surreal impact of, I thought I was hearing bees. I thought that I was hearing bees humming. I didn't understand it. We lived right next to a park, but we didn't understand it. And then, because I'm going home for my tea, and the jungle telegraph has worked. I'm several streets away, but people just called and called and called until they got me. And then the noise became these shapes at the bottom of the street, and then it became this mob, and then really life changed entirely. The direction of your life, where you would be, how you would sound, how just everything. And I've understood that. One of the things I didn't understand really, in fact, it really only occurred to me. It's a very stupid thing really to realize so late. But we didn't ever talk about this,
About the Troubles.
We didn't. I talked about the Troubles a lot, but never talked about this incident and this period of our leaving. And so I suppose the film is partly, has come this late in the day to address something I didn't even really know needed to be addressed. I think there was such a commitment to try and make the leaving work, the sacrifice work, that the notion of what it produced, it wasn't like it was sort of aggressively buried, but just we didn't talk about it, so this talks about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember being in London in the late 60s, early 70s, and there was this guy who just arrived from Belfast, a teacher, and he was walking down the street in Hampstead, and there was a backfire on a car, and he ducked. It was crazy, and he was in shock because he'd been in Belfast. And I just wonder, for you as a kid, I mean, obviously now it's manifested into an extraordinary piece of cinema, but did you ever think about how that was affecting you?
Well, I think yes, in the sense that from the moment of that the sense of being so settled, that sense of knowing who you are, the sense of, I suppose really it wasn't even a metaphor, it was just the truth. In that case, the ground was literally ripped from beneath our feet. And for me, one of the images that is absolutely my experience was walking out of the door, and the paving stones were just gone. I mean, it seemed to me that so you start with, well, what do I rely on? What do I walk on? I walk on paper. Jesus Christ, they're gone, and it's all sand. I didn't know sand existed under these things. Where are they? Oh, Christ, they're at the end of the street forming a barricade, and we now have to check in and out of the street. Then I think excuse me, I'm COVID-free, I promise. I'm tested, but I've got a tiny tickle in my throat. Please forgive me, please don't worry. And if you are worried, wave now, put the mask back on. One of the things actually we wanted to do with the way we shot the movie was to sort of keep, really it's the answer to your question, keep this sense of being unsettled. Going into lockdown, sort of unleashed this film for me, because we were talking about it earlier, this profound feeling we probably all share to some extent that uncertainty was now our sort of modus operandi, and human beings aren't terribly good at dealing with that. And in the way we shot the film, we were trying to sort of live in Buddy's uncertainty post this moment. I suppose what I register it as was the moment where worry began, where concern began, where a future began, where you had to consider things that you had never really considered before, and where you had to gather information stealthily. suddenly you were already into a sort of disguise. You were listening to conversations on stairs. You were staring through the heat haze to have a look at things. And so in terms of the way some of the shots work and some of the transitions work, that sort of sense post that incident, that life was very, was as uncertain as that was. And if it happened once, maybe it could happen again, and life could literally turn upside down in about 20 seconds.
When Judi Dench recorded the award clip for you, she was talking a little bit afterwards and just saying how impressed she was with the way that you navigated safety on set, for the shoot. She was full of praise.
Well, she was. I mean, we were kind of guarding a national treasure. Let's face it. So, I didn't want to be the one to give Judi Dench COVID. That was. I think I'd gone to the Tower of London for that one. No, everybody who joined tested every day for 2 weeks. Everybody on the entire crew tested every day. It was a very sweaty moment as a producer. Every morning when those tests came in, were we going to shoot today? We had, 3 zoned and marked areas of one-way traffic around our set, and you'd prepare for a scene in one of those rooms. You'd send in the props team first, then they'd come out, then the electrical team had to go in, and then they'd go out, and then ultimately it would get to us, and we'd go in. And so you were conscious of it the whole time. You had to make you had to sort of make that some weird kind of positive. I mean, the side effect, a COVID side effect for this film seemed to be that because the cast were living in a bubble at a local hotel, you might say family feeling was developed quite quickly. They all got on like a house on fire, and yeah. So we I guess freedom means having no choice, doesn't it? And we had no choice, so we ended up having a lot of freedom.
I know, it seems to me like an amazing, the films that have come out of this last year and a half have risen to the occasion of figuring out how you get to be creative, focused, safe, and I feel like this is an amazing time for cinema.
There's well, I'm glad you feel that way, and I think that I would agree. What I felt was there's a Van Morrison song that was in here for a while called "Precious Time." Some of you may know it. Precious time is slipping away. It doesn't matter to what God you pray. And I think we were one of the first films in the UK back after the initial lockdown. And the sense of the preciousness of what we do, the privilege of what we do, the fact that we were able to do it, the fact that we on the show were healthy and had the good fortune of that when so many other people were suffering. It was relished and tasted, and our gratitude was deep, is deep, and I think. There was a sort of renewed, intensified dedication. I mean, Judi, really, she always is, really, but as her beautiful late husband used to say, the problem with Judi is every day is bloody Christmas morning. And this film was like that as well. She was full of the joys of spring, and so was everybody. We were very, very lucky.
So, thinking about Judi Dench and you and Shakespeare, I was in London in the late 80s when you had the Renaissance Theatre Company. Mm-hmm. And this was an extraordinary project, and I would say audacious as well. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, I think that you worked with the Birmingham Rep, was it?
Yes,
yeah. And did a series of Shakespeare plays, which you toured the provinces with and then brought to London. And I happened to have arrived in London for vacation, like right when they were playing. So someone said, "Oh, you got to go see it." And so I went to see As You Like It. Mm-hmm. And my socks were so thoroughly knocked off that I had to go the next night as well, which was Much Ado About Nothing. And the thing that was so brilliant was that what this man did was to get 3 rookie directors, people who'd never directed before, but it was Judi Dench, Gwendolyn McEwen, and Derek Jacobi.
Yeah.
So, you know, one part of me was, you know, here you are with this, you know, doing Shakespeare in a country that already has the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National and all this kind of stuff. But there was a scene in Judi Dench's production of Much Ado that I still remember, and it was a line from Don John when it was delivered with such a naturalness that it felt so completely contemporary that when I went back that night, I got out my Shakespeare and looked it up, and I thought, God, it was exactly Shakespeare's words. And I wanted to know if you had gone into that project intending to reclaim Shakespeare or to reshift the way that Shakespeare was played so that it connects.
Well, nothing so grand, probably.
Well, it worked.
Well, it sounds, you put it beautifully, but it was, it's funny, now you see the film, I wanted to do Shakespeare that my parents would like, you know.
Yeah.
And by which I mean, you know, it's so funny thinking, us even talking about Shakespeare, you see that kid in that film, and I think, well, that kid's going nowhere near Shakespeare, but somehow it happened. And but it was, you know, I wanted to be but you see where the connection is. This film explains it in a way, which is that when I fell in love with it at school, when I fell in love with whatever I fell in love with, it's way too big for me to even understand, but I had some kind of facility for it,
with Shakespeare in school.
Yes,
I mean, yeah.
And then, but I realized that it was a very, very intimidating subject and author and theatre and everything for many people, and it would be for my family. What's the way through? How does it speak to me very naturally? What's my job to perform? How should I do it very naturally? And the thing that you say happened numerous times. A couple of very good friends came and came round after the play and said, well, you made that up, didn't you? You made some of that up. It's not, you know, it's not clever, you know, to do that. And I said, well, really, you should just go and check, honest to God. And I said, it is Shakespeare, and also the magic you're talking about is Shakespeare also, but we've committed to really going with, in that case, the play. There's a lot of beautiful prose, which is so conversational, and so it's sort of poetic prose, if you like. But I guess we were so excited, you know, to be on the road. And unsurprisingly, Judi Dench was a fantastic director, amazing. She'd been a wonderful Beatrice in the play many years before, and she was sensitive and, of course, very funny. We had a long-running fight. I had a very cheap gag that I did in the scene where Benedict overhears people telling him that Beatrice is in fact in love with him, the woman he apparently is at loggerheads with. And I am very surprised at one stage and came out from behind the tree in which I was hiding and suddenly went, oh, Christ, and which obviously isn't Shakespeare. But in the context of the scene, it got a big laugh. And Judy came round incandescent to say, well, you can't do that. I said, it's got a huge laugh. She said, yes, it's got a huge laugh. It's the wrong laugh. It's the wrong laugh. You can't have it. It's not a good laugh. It's out. And so I kept it in, obviously. And then she just turned up one night and said, you've done it again, haven't you? And caught me. So eventually I had to drop it. So she was also, I call her an artistic Puritan, and so she is. And of course she was right. And I learnt a lot from her about directing actors in Shakespeare. She also sought and has a God-given gift for naturalism in Shakespeare.
She really does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was an amazing thing. And of course, then, you know, you've gone on to direct a whole ton of plays by Shakespeare for the screen. Mm-hmm. I mean, you may get to the point where you've done the whole canon. I don't know, but you know, there's something about Shakespeare that gets under your skin. It's in the language, and when you learn, as you know, you do as an actor, to get that language, when you learn both, you know, how it feels, how it speaks, what the science of it is, the whole thing, But then when you get the humanity of the stories and the brilliance of the truth of those stories, you've done a lot of internalizing as a writer who's adapted Shakespeare for the screen and as a director who's taken Shakespeare to the screen. You've internalized a lot of that. And I'm seeing it in Belfast. You know, it feels to me as though there is a lot of the wisdom that you've received as a, you know, as a writer, as a director, as an actor, that has a Shakespearean sensibility in this film.
Well, I think the you know, they say, don't they, about writers, if you want to write, you need to read a lot, so essentially, I suppose I've read a lot of Shakespeare. So you know the sort of pinnacle that you can't even see from the earthly and dwarfish distance of your own talent, but you can see where it can get to, and you can also see economy in writing. You know, often his most memorable lines are the ones that are so simple. When we are born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. Those kinds of lines that are sort of thick with resonance and experience. What I did learn was that if you at least can ape some 55,000th hand version of what that's doing, and you get somebody like Judi Dench, then by the time as the grandmother at the end, she sort of essentially, whatever that moment is, lets go, blesses them, just takes on that burden. The combination of her Shakespearean knowledge, life experience, technical skill as an actor, brilliance as a film person who is so utterly still, physically still, her head is still, the phrasing is clear, the feeling is deep, then a whole combination of things can work for you. But the economy one learnt in the hands of great artists at the service of the story. That's something that, with every fibre of our being, we tried to apply wherever we could understand it.
I have to say, Judi Dench in Belfast is a dead ringer for my Irish grandmother.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Except she was from Dublin, so she was a Catholic. So I would love it if you would talk a little bit about the Protestant Catholic thing in Ireland, how you experienced it, how you came to articulate that, what you understood about it, because you take it to a place of love in your film, and yet the conflict between Protestants and Catholics in Ireland, in the British Isles in general, is hundreds of years old. Thank you, Henry VIII. I don't know whether people realize that, how deeply entrenched it is, and just curious about, how did that, your relationship to it come out for you as a kid or as a young man?
Well, in the film where we're trying to see things at all times through the eyes of this 9-year-old, and obviously I'm writing this at a distance of 50 years, and not absolutely writing me, but writing a sort of version of me at 9, seeing all of this, including what became, this immediate obstacle course of understanding that somebody I played with, who lived 2 doors down, who happened to be called Patrick, but we called him Paddy, shortly after the incidents at the beginning of the film, suddenly becomes something where I've got to make the equation. So Patrick equals Catholic. Catholic, no good. Window smashed in, must be bad. Why? My dad keeps telling us that everybody's the same. We've got to respect each other. The understanding was as sort of simplistic as that suddenly a new rule had emerged, was what the 9-year-old found. He was not aware of Henry VIII or all the whataboutism that every Irish person could go back and quote as they quote historical. But you did this, but we did this. But what about that? Well, what about this? Or what about that? And so. you know, there were numerous, so they talk about it, Buddy and Moira talk about it, trying to guess the names thing. We always got it wrong. And there were numerous occasions when I was walking through the park and somebody would come up and go, "You're a Protestant or a Catholic?" And I go, "I know, oh Christ," because you're thinking, is he a Protestant asking me because he thinks I'm a Catholic, or is he a Catholic pretending to be a Protestant asking me? And you'd always get beaten up anyway. So you would just sort of target practice. But there was... I mean, as the film suggests, I was fascinated by some of what seemed to be the extremely clever pluses of the Catholic system. This confession malarkey seemed to be a terrific way of limiting attendance, and you seem to have a few Catholics in tonight, I see, but you seem to have a lot of ceremony, a lot of fancy costumes and everything, and whereas we had the guy in this film who just literally puts the fear of God in you, you know, and then says, "By the way, have you brought the cash?" Ring a bell, anybody? In later life, I would say I'm friends of every possible persuasion, and we often argue about whose guilt is richer. I've got Catholic friends who say Catholic guilt, you know, Protestant guilt doesn't touch Catholic guilt, and Jewish friends who say, forget it, the Catholic and Protestant guilt, forget it, you're non-starters in that race. As a 9-year-old, to me it was already absurd, because I simply was resentful that this thing, of course it was a pretty feeble kind of quality in my part, but having been presented with two roads, I couldn't believe how quickly I forgot which one it was supposed to be. I wasn't sure whether long and winding went with the baddie or the goodie, and straight and narrow, but is that a trick of Satan's, you know? And once you start overthinking it, you're done. So, I mean, my resentment at my Protestant upbringing from that point onwards, I mean, it gave me a headache for it seemed like for years.
Thank you. I love that there's so much in the film that is just gets like to that essence of, you know, what it is to be Irish. The humor in it. I mean, you even snuck in Danny Boy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how great could it get? I mean, there's such a warmth in that, but also Van Morrison as your soundtrack. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there was never any doubt in your mind that you would want to have Van Morrison be your soundtrack, but was it, I mean, I listened to that soundtrack and think that has to have cost a lot of money for the rights.
Yes, I suppose, but he was also a fantastic collaborator on this. He's from I'm sure you all know, but he is from Belfast, and at this time, 1969, he was already at a very young age, a sort of global star with an album called Astral Weeks, which many of you will be familiar with, just the beginning of his incredible catalogue. And he came out here for a while, as you probably know.
His parents had a record shop about 2 miles from here.
Amazing, yeah.
In San Anselmo called Caledonia Records. And his dad was like Van in his, you know, he just looks like his dad, but his dad looked like a little sort of an older gnomish version of Van Morrison.
And those records, of course, brought to Van, and in Belfast, produced this curious and brilliant, unique hybrid of an artist who referred to himself as a corner boy. You know, somebody brought up on the corners, on the street corners. He knew the city so well, but he also had a voice which is a sort of complete orchestra in itself, which had unique access to soul in sort of both senses, in the musical sense and in the sense of feeling and sort of spiritual largesse. And so when he sings something like Carrickfergus in this, an air you may be familiar with, it's an absolute heartbreaker, to me anyway. He can take, in that case, what some people might feel is a rather simplistic, you know, trite Irish air, and he turns it into a sort of a piece of high art. And it's him, in that case, that recording is him accompanied by the Chieftains, who sadly lost their great leader this last week, on the harp, and then the bass. It's my God, it's a brilliant stuff. He gives he gives a sort of soul to Belfast. He gives a soul to the film, and he was a fantastic collaborator. He's like Dench in a way. There's some people are just put here to do certain things. Dench is here to act, and Van Morrison is here to give us music. And when you don't even give them notes, you're around them, possibly having a thought or two, and then about 4 or 5 words in, they go, "Yep, got it. Okay, leave it with me." And that's what Van does. That's what Judi does. They're not cutting you off. But you've been lucky enough to set one of their synapses firing, and then you would just want to stand back and see what's going to come your way. So that was a great thing to experience.
Sounds great. And then you shot it in black and white. This is such an amazing year, again, for black and white and then some. I mean, I love also what you've done with, well, the pictures, as we used to say. You must have gone to the pictures when you were a kid, right?
For sure, yeah.
Talk about the choices. I mean, was there ever any doubt in your mind that you would shoot in black and white as opposed to in color?
Some of the no choice of COVID giving you freedom meant that you had to make instinctive choices, swift choices. So my gut said black and white. I mean, you might just attribute it to what a famous theatre director, Peter Brook, called the uninformed hunch. And so my uninformed hunch was it was black and white. Why? Well, sometimes the streets of Belfast felt that way to me. Grey northern climes. I watched Hollywood films, many westerns in black and white on television. That was a big formative influence. And when I went to the pictures, it was colour that in the mid-'60s that knocked the socks off us. But I also wanted to have this curious, paradoxical quality that black and white has for storytelling. You know, people say things like, I told them it's there in black and white, as if black and white is an additional level of authenticity, when in fact it's not how we see the world. But it also has at the same time this heightened quality. It has a sort of timelessness to it. It offers a more forensic look often at the human face, I think. And there's also a certain kind of what I would call Hollywood black and white as opposed to European black and white, which can be a little more sort of parched and scorched. I'd call the Hollywood black and white that I enjoyed watching from noir films a sort of more velvety, silky, liquid kind of quality. We did not add grain to the picture in any way. We wanted, I mean, there are a couple, and the results of it with a couple of our actors, I mean, they're all amazingly compelling actors, but, Dornan and Balfe are very good-looking people. There's just no getting away from that. And there's a shot, to my mind anyway, where Caitríona Balfe leans back against a wall. It's a Passage of Time sequence, and I think it's, I can't quite remember which song's playing, forgive me. But she leans back, she's got a little short-sleeve top on. She just leans her head back. And it is that sort of unadorned velvet black and white. And the first time we screened it, I could hear some intakes of breath from simply the visual pleasure of seeing this particular person. And then cutting to Jamie Dornan walking down the street, walking down the alleyway at the back, looking like sort of James Dean or Steve, or kind of Paul Newman. And these are two really wonderful people who have got none of the sort of weird relationships that very beautiful people can have with their looks. They're utterly just regular folk. But there was something about the combination of their particular physiognomy with black and white and this idea that the kid has at 9-year-old of the phenomenal glamour of his parents, which I think, if you're lucky enough to be in a family situation, often that is what you see at that time before you get a bit older and then tell them everything is wrong with them. But when they're younger and in black and white, it can have that sort of additional sort of just sheer visual pleasure. And some of these choices were made from just an instinct that it was the right thing, as well as a preference for that particular aesthetic.
Well, you mentioned your young hero. I mean, talk about having an instinct. I mean, he has an instinct, and the fact that you found him was kind of extraordinary, I would think. He's just, what a find.
Well, thank you. I mean, once again, we were simply faced with the choice that if we did not find the kid, we couldn't make the film. It was simple as that. There were a couple of routes. I showed the script to my brother and my sister when I finished it to get the thumbs up or not. If they had said no, we wouldn't have made it. But they were very happy, and they're very supportive, very emotional, but very supportive. And then we went through 300 boys submitted videos, and then we'd whittle down across weeks and weeks to the final 6. And then what struck me about Jude was that he was in some ways quite a shy lad in the way sometimes actors are. If you find the right mode to release their showy off personality, something in the yin and yang of that is very good. But he was an Irish dancer. If you notice, actually, in that scene on the sofa with the grandparents, and he's got his feet on the table, his feet are like that. He's got an amazing, what the dancers here would call amazing turnout or whatever. But he'd done 3 or 4 years of Irish dancing, which meant getting up at 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday, going to a dance competition miles away, and competing, and then waiting to see if he could go forward. And so he had discipline, he had practice, he had physical dexterity, but he also had a capacity to listen. I knew that half the performance or more would be the way he reacted to what was going on, the way he listened, and you needed to be, I think, compelled by that quality. For instance, in that same sequence where Van sings Carrickfergus, the kid's saying goodbye to his dad, we go back and find him inside just thinking, and it's a dynamite look, with a little twinkle in his eye. I don't want to go out and just give him a hug and say it's all going to be okay. He was very quick to learn. First 2 days, he could not stop looking at the camera. Every time he did something, he would sneak a look. He thought we weren't seeing him. I said, Jude, we'll always catch you, mate. We'll always see, because we're behind the camera. So he said after 2 days, well, what shall I look at? I said, look at Judi Dench. She's ever so good. So he looked at Judy and Ciarán and Jamie and Caitríona, and he got on very well with Lewis McCaskey, who plays Will, his brother. They improvised well together. There's a funny moment with Jude where in the scene where it's Christmas and he's saying, I don't want to go to Belfast and I don't want to leave Belfast. And a big scene for him, and we had to find the way to sort of prep him a few days before, but not worry him, not burden him. He's only 10 years old. I want him to have a lovely, happy life and not have some movie mess it up for him, So, you're in, what's the loco parentis as well. His mum was there the whole time, a darling woman, and they've done a fantastic job with him. But we prepped him for that. And but then I said, look, my experience as an actor, for what it's worth, mate, is that I can see what I've written here, but I reckon you probably need a bit of a warm-up. So I'm going to ask Jamie and Caitríona to improvise a conversation with you before the actual scene begins. Are you okay with that? And yes, he was, and it helped enormously, and the two of them were great. And then he went into it, and I don't know that we did it many times, because that was part of working with him, is try and don't make him repeat. You want it recreated, not repeated. So don't do it too many times, because he's the age he is. But he was exhausted. So then we do the scene next where he's he's there with his chocolate lips from his thing, and the two actors are in the background having the conversation about the intensifying gravity of the situation and talking about leaving home, and Jamie says you brought them up, etc., and it's a sort of deep moment for them. And in the foreground, the kid was fast asleep. He was so exhausted by having done the scene that we realized as we were starting to film it, I'm suddenly hearing, and the sound had come. I think the kid really is asleep. I said, well, no, we leave him. We wake him up, we'll traumatize him, for God's sake. So I told Jamie and Caitríona, look, you've got to be quiet, etc. Just do the scene like it's your kid, an overworked kid on Christmas days who had too many chocolates. You're grateful he is asleep. You've just upset him. When are you going to get him to bed, etc. And then so the scene plays in a 4-shot. There's Jude here, there's Lewis behind, and then in the deep background, the sort of Citizen Kane deep focus would-be kind of thing. the two of them play this scene beautifully, and then we cut, and Jamie said, so how are you going to cover this? You're going to do Caitríona's close-up first on mine. I said, I'm not going to cover it. That's it really plays like this. And he said, but it's a big moment between them. I said, yeah, but when we have him in the foreground like that, this moving, breathing thing, who really is the moving, breathing, exhausted Jude Hill, the subject of your very important conversation is with us the entire time. And that makes for a powerful thing, and also it kept you very, very conscious of them the whole time, and you acted it beautifully. And if I go in and cover you now, it looks like I'm trying to persuade this audience. I'm going to manipulate them now, whereas I think the situation is what it is. And now, so are you happy with that, Jamie? Yes, I'm. Okay, everybody leave very quietly now. We need to leave very quietly. Get Jude's mum and get her to come in and wake him up, could you? Which she did. And then he looked like, oh my God, what's going on? But so he was a delight.
Well, this whole evening has been more than a delight. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Thank you so much for coming here on this whistle-stop tour in this crazy time. But most of all, thank you for this extraordinary film. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks,
thank you, Zoe. And thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate it.